Welcome to English 4E. This is Term 1B, and we are on Class 18. Today we are looking at assignments K22, the introduction to the novel, and if we have time, K23. It is 2024-2025 school year. I am Jillian Percy, and here are all the ways to contact us. If you want to talk to me while I'm on the air about the assignments I'm teaching today, 1-800-465-7144. If you want to talk to me at the office, either privately or about different assignments, 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. You can fax us work at 1-800-463-7852. You can also email your work, jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca or jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. Facebook is one way to contact me. You can see below what my Facebook looks like. It's like a little fall scene and then a little avatar of me. And then G Percy Wassa with a capital G, capital P, and a capital W. There are two different YouTube channels that you can find the classes on. There is my teacher channel, which has all the classes I've taught last year and this year. And then there is the school channel. This has everything from all the different teachers, but only from this year. So if you're working on a course that I teach that I taught last year but haven't gotten to yet, you can always check out my channel. So that's one kind of difference between the two of them. All right, to hand in work. If you need to take a photograph of an assignment, please make sure that it's clear enough so that I can read your writing. Once you've taken the picture, download it to your phone or computer, save it, and then send it as an attachment in the email. If you just share it directly as an email, it comes up really huge on the computer and it's very hard to shrink down and print off properly. Whenever you hand in your work, please send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. You can include me in the email if you want to be doubly safe. That's the jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. When you do this, the secretary is able to log that you've submitted the work. It also puts it into our email files. So that if something were to happen to me, or if another teacher came on in another year, we are still able to access it. And I've used that several times this year where people decided to finish a course, they started another year. I didn't have access to it, but we were able to go into the data files and find their previous assignments. So rather than having to do them all over, we just kind of use the same things. So that's kind of awesome. If an assignment asks you for a rough and a good draft, please label which one is which and include them both in the same email. If an assignment does not ask you for a rough draft, please do not send me it in, because I end up spending time marking that and then find, oh, wait, later on they've included a good draft. If there's some special reason why you've included a rough draft, label it and make sure I know why you've sent it. Like maybe you want me to see something, or I never know, but sometimes there's reasons. Just make sure you give me a little note so I've got a heads up so that I'm only doing what I need to do with that. Okay, we are almost finished week 5. Today's Wednesday. This is class 18. We're beginning the unit 2. Tomorrow we will, if we don't get to the novel today, we'll begin the novel tomorrow. And then next week is the last week before Christmas holidays. So if you need to reach me, you need to try and contact me over the next few days, because after that, I will be gone. Okay? All right, today's work. Learn different strategies to understand new vocabulary. Learn how the parts of speech can impact how to use new vocabulary in a sentence. Understand common sentence patterns in order to create sentences that demonstrate understanding of new vocabulary. And Unit 2 begins. Here is our overview. Now, I have changed a few of Unit 1 assignments, and I am almost certainly going to change a few of these assignments. Not the ones we're tackling here, 22, 23, 24. They're going to stay the same. For the most part, though, it's fine if you do the original version. I'm just offering the alternate version, and then by next year, then the alternate version will be the only one that's offered. The one thing about this is assignment 23 is basically guided reading questions on the entire novel. So what I strongly suggest is kind of work on 22 and 23 and 24 sort of together. And that might take you a few weeks before you move on. Okay. It's just a very meaty question. I wish they kind of split it up rather than making it as one question, but that's kind of what they've done. And then key question 24 is a bunch of sort of reader response questions, thinking about how you feel about what you read. So that will take a little bit longer to complete too. And then the other parts I think are actually pretty easy. Okay, so Unit 2, this unit is designed to help you investigate human experiences through the study of character and theme. You will apply the literary terms introduced in Unit 1 and will use a variety of reading strategies to understand the key elements of a novel, including setting, character, theme, and conflict. The novel to be studied is Where the Rivers Meet by Dawn Sawyer, and you will also examine Never Cry Wolf as a media work. So this meets the expectation categories of knowledge and understanding, thinking and inquiry, communication, and application. So the reason we kind of talk about this is because it's one of the things as a school that we're required to make sure we cover all these areas when we teach you anything, okay? So we want to make sure that you're able to read and demonstrate an understanding of a novel, that's our knowledge, demonstrate an understanding of the elements of a novel, also a knowledge category, identify and explain the effect of specific elements of style in a novel, that's communication and application. Use your knowledge of vocabulary and language conventions to speak, read, and write clearly, correctly, and competently for specific purposes and audiences. That's knowledge and communication. Use a variety of print and electronic sources to gather information and explore information for your written work. That's inquiry. Inquiry is like researching. Revise your written work collaboratively or independently with a focus on support for ideas, accuracy, clarity, and coherence. That's application, in other words, applying what you know. And then finally, editing and proofreading to produce final drafts that use correct grammar with the support of print and electronic resources when appropriate. In other words, that's applying what you know about grammar, spelling, and punctuation to basically kind of proofread. Okay. Oh, here we go. So our very first activity is again activity 1, assignment number 2, and this is again in unit 2. So if you haven't already received this book, Where the Rivers Meet, it should look like this. Sometimes people get like a photocopied version of this, which is fine too. It's the same. Let me know if there's kind of an issue. Let's see, the entire part of this first thing is going to be 160 marks. This is a major part of the course, and it is a major part of the exam. So I've occasionally had people want to know if they can skip this, and basically you cannot skip this. There's no way to avoid this and still pass this particular course. All right, so the main purpose of activity 1 is to provide you with a structured approach to an initial reading of any novel. And by the end of this activity, you will have developed an understanding of the novel for this course, developed your vocabulary, and gained insight into the central characters. As mentioned in the description at the beginning of this unit, the novel Where the Rivers Meet will be studied. Some of you, at least, may have already read this novel at one point or another. If you've done so, hopefully you found it to be an interesting and worthwhile story because it was selected for this reason and because of the issues contained in it. There will be opportunities for shared reading of the novel during class time. Now, the person that originally wrote this used a course platform called Smart Bridget. We're no longer using that particular platform. So that was kind of how it happened. There is going to be a little bit of reading. We'll tackle some today or tomorrow, depending on where we land at the very end of this. So this is the thing. This is these 3 assignments, and you might want to take it chapter by chapter, like do chapter 1 in vocabulary, chapter 1 in reading for content, and chapter 1 for rural, and then move on to chapter 2. But you don't have to do it that way. For vocabulary, you're going to examine a list of words. There's a glossary or like a little mini dictionary at the back of the unit. And then you can use a thesaurus to find words with a similar meaning and write some sentences. Then you're going to answer some very specific questions on the plot, the events, or the character in the story. And then finally, you're going to be keeping a response journal for any 6 of the chapters, writing a paragraph on each one. Each of your paragraphs must have at least 6 sentences, and then you get the opportunity to express your opinion, your thoughts, your feelings about what you've been reading, okay? So we're going to start with the vocabulary development one. Okay, as you read through Where the Rivers Meet, or any novel for that matter, you are going to encounter words that you may or may not know the meanings of. That happens to me too, right? Understanding the vocabulary that an author uses is important for overall comprehension or understanding of the novel as a whole. Also, through reading, you will be able to develop and expand your vocabulary to apply to your own spoken and written languages. And we're going to come up to this, but I want to talk about, like, there are 2 different types of dictionaries. There are online dictionaries and there are print dictionaries. If you are at a learning center, your learning center should already have dictionaries. If you are in a community that does not have a learning center, I know we have some of those, and you need a dictionary, contact me, let me know. I can send you a dictionary, okay? So here's the official assignment. There's a whole list of words. It's taken from the novel, and it will list the page on which each word is found, and they're also grouped by chapter. Like I said, there's a glossary on page 23 that tells you the meaning of each word. And remember, a glossary is like a little mini dictionary, and it can be included in a textbook. In this case, we include it in the unit. Also remember, lots of words can have more than one meaning. So you might be familiar with the word one way, and maybe the novel is using it slightly differently. As you examine each word, think about the context in which it is used in the story. In other words, how is it being used? Where is it being used? And you're going to choose 10 of the words listed, only 10, and write sentences of your own to show that you understand what those words mean. And again, it's only 10 sentences altogether, not 10 sentences per chapter. Okay, so here is the chapter in your book. Now, I don't know why, but they created this chart in a way that I find challenging to read. They did it down instead of across. So like there's chapter 1, chapter 2, and then chapter 3, chapter 4. Then you go to the top, chapter 5, chapter 6, and then down here, chapter 7, chapter 8. Then you're back up here to chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 11, chapter 12, and then you go back up to the top again, chapter 13, chapter 14, chapter 15, and chapter 16. And as you can see, they organize it by chapter. They also tell you exactly what page you can find it on. So this is why I was saying you can do this exercise by chapter. You could start off with like, oh, okay, maybe I'm going to do 1 or 2 sentences from chapter 1. And then you would just hang on to the assignment and leave yourself room. Do chapter 2, do a few of those, and keep on going, and then hand it in to me when you are at the end of the novel. A lot of people do choose to do it all at once at the beginning, and that is totally fine. The one thing I would suggest is make sure you do words that, as much as possible, are words you really don't understand. Okay, because they do exist, and it can be frustrating to get to that spot in the novel and basically have to do it all over again and look up the words again when you could have already done it the first time. I'm just going to kind of quickly read these words so you know how they sound. I know some people like to read out loud, or they like to know how a word sounds because it's confusing to them if they don't hear it. Remember that a good dictionary will also show you how it should be said, and an online dictionary will often have like a little megaphone or speaker sign, and you can click on it and it will have like a little voice that will say it so you can hear how it sounds. So chapter 1, we've got resonating, exasperation, gallantly. Chapter 2, impertinent, coward, insidious, insolence, lateral, contemplated, skeins, oblivious. Chapter 5, exuded, intricate, quavering. Chapter 6, sulkily, surly, perilously, preened. Chapter 9, ominously, reluctance, derision. Chapter 10, ruefully, immense. Chapter 13, sorry, I don't like this word, frenetic, nimble, careening. Chapter 14, indecipherable, defiance, apprehensively, vocational. And then viable, reproachful, emanating, exorbitant. Ashran, meandered, disembark, reverting. Chapter 7, solace, parchment, commend, wavering, shimmering. Chapter 8, desolate. Chapter 11, grimacing, nonchalant. Chapter 12, meager. Chapter 15, conceited or exhilaration. Exhilaration. I said that wrong, but wrong. Chapter 16, amnesty. Okay, so if you go to the end of your unit, sorry, hang on a second. My apologies, just had to cough there. Okay, so you'll see a glossary. I've only got a little part of the glossary, but you can see here, there's 50 words, and it will say resonating, page 1, and then it tells you what part of speech it is, verb. And then it tells you the meaning, or maybe more than one meaning, filling a place with sound, producing echoes. Number 2, exasperation, noun, greatly annoyed or angered. Number 3, gallantly, page 6, adverb, bravely or courageously. Number 4, impertinent, adjective, not showing proper respect. Number 5, coward, page 8, verb, crouched or shrank in fear. Okay? Now, it does not necessarily give you every single meaning. And if you look at the sentence and feel like you don't necessarily understand, you may want to check a regular dictionary or check a thesaurus. Sometimes I find that the synonyms a thesaurus provides actually are a little bit clearer to understand than the dictionary definitions. So we're going to do one together for practice. I'm just going to pick the very first word, resonating. It's a verb, filling a place with sound, producing echoes. And I'm going to check the online dictionary to see what it says this is about. Oh, hang on a second. Oh, when I did that, I didn't really care for the dictionary. I found the thesaurus more helpful. It says echo, to continue or be repeated in a series of reflected sound waves. It also uses the word reverberate, and reverberate for some reason is very clear. I picture something vibrating, right? And the example they used was the deep sounds of the bassoon resonated throughout the concert hall. Okay, so then I don't want to do something very simple like I hear resonating. Well, 2 reasons. That doesn't really give me the idea that I understand what it means. But the other thing is, resonating is a verb, it's an action. The way I've written it, I hear like, it sounds like I'm saying a noun, like I hear a guitar or I hear a bird. But if resonating is a verb, it's doing something. There has to be a subject or a noun that's doing the resonating. So here are some better examples. Things like, the boom of the fireworks was resonating all over the city. The drum beat is resonating around the concert hall. In both of these sentences, I've used the word as a verb, like it says, and I've showed that I understand its meaning through my sentence. So I'm looking for both those things, that you've used the word as the correct part of speech and that your sentence shows that you understand the meaning. If you make a mistake with either one of those, you lose a mark, okay? So if you write a sentence and it just sounds like you don't quite get it, then you're going to be losing a mark. So be careful to do a good sentence that makes it really clear. Oh, I put this in here because I forgot that they had originally, hang on a second. Oh, there we go. That they didn't just use the short forms. Dictionaries will often just use the short forms, N for noun, adj for adjective, V for verb, adv for adverb. Pron for pronoun, prep for preposition, and conj for conjugation. Remember that English is a language that relies on word order, literally what order the word comes in the sentence to help create meaning. Not all languages do that. That means that there's a lot of basic sentence patterns that have kind of developed that will help you create a good sentence. So if you know the word is a noun, for example, you can use one of those common sentence patterns to help you create a new sentence. For example, one really common pattern is noun plus a verb plus an object noun, like boys love pizza. So your noun might be doing the action, like the boys, or receiving the action, like the pizza. Another really common pattern is adjective plus noun plus verb phrase plus adverb. Like the old man is running away. Here, man is the noun that's getting described and is doing the action. Okay. Some other noun and sentence patterns. It can be a little trickier to create a good sentence if the noun is describing a concept or an idea or a feeling, but there are still some really common patterns that we're used to seeing, okay? Sometimes you'll have feeling noun plus a verb plus a noun plus a prepositional phrase like sadness filled her heart with painful memories. So sadness is the feeling noun. Anger overwhelmed the man to the breaking point. You can also do a subject noun plus a verb plus a preposition plus a feeling noun. Her voice was filled with fury. Her thoughts were flooded with anxiety. His body froze in terror. See how there's kind of a pattern there? Those patterns are really helpful to create a strong sentence. Hang on a second. Okay, you can also have concept nouns plus a verb plus a noun with adjectives or a dependent clause. So democracy, that's our concept noun, is a government system which is elected by the people. That's a dependent clause. Photosynthesis, our concept noun, is a digestive process that changes sunlight into food for a plant. There's our dependent clause. You can also have the noun or pronoun plus a verb plus what's called a that clause, which might include the target noun. Like, I feel that democracy upholds freedom in our country. The group believes that racism destroys connections between people. And in those cases, democracy was our concept word, or racism was our concept word. So those are another way you can use a concept word in a sentence. There are also some common patterns for adjectives. Adjectives normally occur right in front of a noun. Remember that the noun could be part of the subject, it could be part of the object, or it could be part of a prepositional phrase. So you could have adjective plus subject noun plus verb. The tall man screamed. Or subject noun plus verb plus adjective and object noun. The boy threw the red ball. Ball is your noun. Subject noun plus verb plus preposition plus adjective plus noun. That's a complicated one. But the robber hid in the large bushes. Okay. Again, large is describing the bushes. Red is describing the ball. Tall is describing the man. Adjectives can also come after a state of being verb such as am, is, are, was, and were. Subject noun plus verb plus adjective. The doctor was tired. Tired is describing the doctor. Subject noun plus verb plus adjective plus a dependent clause. The mom was happy after she saw her son on stage. Happy is describing how the mom feels. All right, we've talked a lot about verbs in some of the other classes. Remember that verbs are almost always going to come after the subject. They might be immediately right after, or they might have an adverb in front of them. Verbs can also work together as a team with several verbs right next to each other. So you could have the subject noun plus a verb plus an object noun. The boy spotted a dog. Or subject noun plus adverb plus verb plus maybe an object noun or a prepositional phrase. The tree slowly bent to the ground. Okay. In English, it's unusual to have verbs at the beginning unless you're making a command like go to your room, or sometimes we do like inverted questions. Okay. That can happen, but I think it would be hard to use a lot of the vocabulary words that I saw in that format. It's probably safer to keep them sort of right after the subject, which is typical. Adverbs are one of the trickiest words, I think, to use because they have multiple spots that they can go in. They can go right in front or right after a verb, right? Like noun plus adverb plus verb. The boy quietly wept, and quietly is describing wept. Or I could put noun plus verb and then the adverb. The boy yelled loudly. Loudly is describing how he yelled. Adverbs can also go right at the beginning of a sentence to describe the whole sentence. Quietly, the boy wept. Loudly, the boy yelled. Now, I wanted to point out we have said adverbs can sometimes describe adjective or other adverbs, and that is true. But normally, those are conditional adverbs, things like very. So you'd like very tired, um, very slowly, extremely, barely, scarcely, somewhat, never, not, quite. Again, a lot of the adverbs that I saw in that vocabulary list, they wouldn't quite work for that. They're more likely to be used to be describing a verb. It's not impossible if you think of a great sentence, go ahead. I'm just saying in all likelihood. The other thing to remember as you're doing this vocabulary exercise is one word can have multiple parts of speech. Just like one person can do several jobs, maybe you're waitress in the mornings and then you help out at the hospital for a few hours, and then maybe in the evenings you're doing housekeeping. Same thing, one word can be a multitasker and be doing all sorts of things. So in our glossary, the part of speech that matches its use in the book will be correct. But if you're trying to look up one of the words that you don't understand that's not in our glossary, you may need to take a minute to figure out which word definition you mean. So for example, some nouns can get used as verbs and are obviously related in meaning. My address is 1234 Main Street, Anytown, Ontario. In this case, I'm using it as a noun and it's telling you what place I live at. Or I could be saying, I need to address these envelopes. In this case, I'm using it as a verb. I'm saying I'm going to write down the place where people live. So they're connected, but they're not exactly the same. The other thing you need to be aware of is that a word can change its parts of speech depending on the ending that is added. Sometimes people will take a word and they just kind of put it anywhere. Maybe they've usually seen it as an adjective, and so they stick it as an adjective, even though with the ending, it's really a noun or it's really a verb. So be especially cautious with this. So I used the word exasperate to kind of give you an example. Exasperate, exasperating, and exasperated, those are all verb forms, right? The ing and the ed are verb forms. He was trying hard not to exasperate his boss with too many questions. The dad was exasperated with his son's mischief at school. But exasperated can also work as an adjective. I could say the exasperated mom tried not to shout as the third cup hit the floor and broke. If I add tion, it becomes a noun, exasperation. Exasperation was all over my friend's face as he stared at the brand new leather coat his dog had chewed. And then I could have a word like exasperatedly, which is an adverb that I made out of the verb form. My boss is driving me crazy, my friend said, exasperatedly. Okay, so be mindful of that. Look at the parts of speech and look at the ending to help you understand it or to use it in one of these sentences, okay? Overall, the big idea is think about how that type of word would relate to the other parts of speech. Nouns are a type of person, thing, place, or an idea, a feeling, or concept. Adjectives are going to describe the nouns. Verbs are generally, but not always, an action. And adverbs are going to describe verbs, but might also describe other adverbs or adjectives. For this particular assignment, they didn't use articles, interjections, conjunctions, pronouns, or prepositions. And really, it's because those don't change a whole lot. We're normally pretty familiar with them. So most of the words you're going to use are either nouns, adjectives, verbs, or adverbs. All right, just to kind of make it a little bit easier. Okay, so looking at the book, there's a foreword. The foreword to the book is written by Art Napoleon, who is of Cree and Dene heritage. A foreword is just kind of like a little introduction, right? Somebody who knows the person or knows the book, usually both, kind of explains what the book's about or what the person is about, and sort of, I don't know, just kind of provides a bridge between you and the book, okay? So hang on a second, I'm gonna grab a little sip of water here so I can dive into reading this here. Educators who buy into the current mainstream education system do not usually embrace all of Don Sawyer's ideas, but even they are often spellbound by his presentation skills and depth of knowledge. It can be difficult, after all, to argue with facts and statistics that have been meticulously researched and presented by an enthusiastic and engaging orator who is not afraid to tackle tough issues facing not just Aboriginal peoples, but also society as a whole. After attending a couple of Don's lively workshops in the Shuswap and inviting him to my home community of the Saulteaux First Nations in northeastern British Columbia, I became his colleague at the Native Adult Education Resource Center run by Okanagan College in Salmon Arm, BC. This unique and exciting program took us right across Western Canada, providing in-services for adult educators and community developers, conducting research projects, and developing innovative curriculum designed specifically for Aboriginal learners. It was my crash course in decolonizing mythologies and my introduction to participatory, student-centered, and community-based programming. I was introduced to concepts of different learning styles through the teachings of educators such as Paola Freire, and was privileged to work with all of BC's top Indigenous training institutions at the time. As an advocate of community-controlled education, I was in my glory. It was also at the Native Adult Education Resource Center that I began my own journey of self-discovery, dealing with early childhood trauma, including various forms of racism. Apparently, these demons had been lurking in the recesses of my psyche for decades. Instead of being taken aback, Dawn encouraged me to keep on working while seeking help. Picture a white upper middle class academic, gifted in the cognitive realms of the medicine wheel, consoling a big broken down Cree man sobbing on the copy room floor. It's a good thing that our office was not part of the main campus. Despite such difficulties, our services remained very much in demand, and this spoke loudly of the burning hunger for culturally relevant approaches to learning and teaching. Dawn and I developed an effective partnership because we reached out to care for one another, each within the confines of our own values and cultural understandings. Dawn didn't try to become Native, and I never tried to become white. Unlike the Lone Ranger and Tonto, we reached across the divide of our differences, and we held each other in an embrace of mutual respect. Despite our differences and occasional headbutting, we became brothers. We were, after all, working on projects that encourage cross-cultural bridging. These experiences planted the seeds that eventually led me back to my own traditions and spiritual ways, and for this I am eternally grateful. This environment of safety was what I needed to make sense of my personal life and move forward with renewed hope. Where the Rivers Meet is a story about this kind of hope. It is a story about the aftermath of colonialism, racism, and a struggle to overcome enormous obstacles. While set in the BC interior, it's a story that could have happened anywhere in Canada to any Aboriginal community, urban or rural. From the Dene of the West to the Innu of the East, such stories are unfortunately widespread living memories. Whether we choose to deny it or embrace it, a great colonial tragedy has taken place in the lands called Canada. While it didn't take place on our watch, we are left with the collective cultural memory, and it remains as real as ever. It whispers and rumbles through the land from time to time, for the earth remembers, and it does not lie. This collective memory floats through the narrative of where the rivers meet. Nancy Antoine's struggle to deal with this memory and her search for meaning and understanding have served well as an inspiration to Aboriginal youth and adults right across Canada for several decades. Many students have written to Dawn Sawyer, thanking them for inspiring them to seek out their elders, communities, and traditions for personal guidance and a sense of identity and belonging. Nancy's victimization and subsequent courageous quest have even inspired some readers to tell their own stories for the very first time. May such processes continue until they are no longer needed. Where the Rivers Meet is not another victim story. It is more like a victory song. There is no greater compliment to an artist or writer than to know that their work has touched someone at a very deep and personal level, providing hope and a sense of empowerment. Can there be anything more meaningful as we all do our little parts to move forward from a painful, tragic past towards a more open, honest, and hopeful future? Art Napoleon. Art Napoleon is a well-traveled songwriter, storyteller, performer, and writer. Born in Moberly Lake, BC, and of Cree and Dene heritage, he is also involved deeply in many Aboriginal, educational, cultural, and community development projects. Okay. Before we go deeply into this, I want to point out there are definitely issues that come up in this novel that are triggers and maybe sensitive issues. This novel delves deeply into the racial divide, inequalities, and prejudices in this one town. It is reflective of many small towns in Canada, both in the past and the present. So there is the issue of racism, which may be challenging to deal with. It also touches on very difficult topics, including addiction, despair, depression, rape, suicide, and the sense of powerlessness. If at any time this novel is causing you a great deal of grief, depression, bringing up bad memories, I am giving you complete permission in advance to put the novel down. Take a break, call a friend, and vent about the injustices that have existed and still exist in Canada. It is fine to reach out to me and let me know, hey, I need a break from this, okay? Many people have suffered from some of the same problems as in this book and have not yet healed. Please reach out to the people around you to ask for help if depression or despair is overwhelming you. Okay, some possible people to reach out to. There are usually mental health workers in all communities. There are Node-in counselors. There are treatment centers in your community. There are elders, and obviously you also have family. In addition, there are specific numbers that deal. I am picking the ones that deliberately deal with Indigenous people, okay? So if you're experiencing emotional distress, there's one called Hope for Wellness, 1-855-242-3310. It's toll free. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's also an online site, hopeforwellness.ca. If you feel like you are in immediate danger of harming yourself, 911 or whatever number is the emergency services in your community. Here are some of the other ones. The Etig Healing Lodge and Learning Center, 705-534-3724. Fort Francis Tribal Area Health Services, 807-271-0194. Native Child and Family Services Toronto, 416-969-8510. Talk for Healing. This is one specifically for Indigenous women, and it's available in 14 different Indigenous languages, okay? 1-855-554-HEAL. There's also the Wabano Center for Aboriginal Health. This one has support available by appointment or walk-in, only available 5 days a week though, 613-748-0657. There's also the Métis Nation of Ontario's Healing and Wellness Branch. This is another one that has a 24-hour crisis line. It's only available in English or French. Once connected and you've gotten like hooked in with them, they can deliver services in person, over the phone, or by video. 1-877-767-7572. There are also non-urgent numbers, like if you just want to get kind of counseling on a more non-emergency basis for children, 613-217-3143. Adults, 705-929-4753. And there's a toll-free number, 1-800-263-4889. Okay. Before I go on to this, as you read, we are going to talk about the fact that, yes, there's a glossary for many of the tricky words. If you come across an unusual word, though, the very first thing that most readers do is not go to the glossary. You're welcome to do that. But usually what we do is just try and make sense of the sentence using what's called context clues. And context clues just mean the word's place in that sentence, as well as the rest of what the sentence means. So, for example, the very first sentence in the book says, "The railroad trestle lay across the canyon like a web strung between two enormous rocks." What if you don't know what a trestle is? Right away, you already can't picture what's happening. That's frustrating. So you can check the glossary, but in this case, they did not include the word trestle. You can also check a dictionary if you've got one around, or you can use the words to try and help you out. I'm going to kind of show you how we would do that, all right? Here we go. This trestle apparently lays across a canyon. So I know a canyon's like a giant hole in the ground, kind of a little bit like a valley. So this has me picturing something that maybe looks like a bridge. And then the rest of the sentence says the trestle is like a web. That also makes me think of a bridge because all the metal bars might look sort of like a spider web. And so now I'm going to put that word bridge into the sentence to check and see if it makes sense. The railroad bridge lay across the canyon like a web strung between two enormous rocks. Yeah, that makes sense. It may not be the exact word, but it's close enough that I have an idea and can kind of move on. Hang on. Here is a picture of a trestle that I found, right? Sometimes you'll see the supports underneath like this. Sometimes you'll see the supports up there. So that is where she's at the very beginning of the book. The big thing, do you have to stop and look up every word? No, not necessarily. But if you find there's been quite a few unfamiliar words in a row and you're beginning to feel a little bit mixed up and you can't quite picture things anymore, then look them up to make sure you understand. And like in my case, I Googled trestle so I could see it to make sure I had an idea of what it looked like. It's really important when you're reading to kind of have a picture as you're going along. If you're just reading the words but not picturing things, it can be really hard to keep track of what's going on. So anytime you start to feel confused or a little bit lost, you may want to back up and check, is there a word that's come up that you weren't familiar with? Maybe you guessed it wrong, or that can happen too. And you need to go back and take a look and figure it out. Okay, looking at the time. All right, I don't really want to, hang on a second. Okay, I've got one more thing I can do. All right. So before I go on, normally when I look at a book, I've picked the book out. In this case, you haven't had that choice. I apologize, can't be helped. I usually try and decide, do I want to read this book or not? And I look at it, I look at the cover, I look at the person, I look at the title, and I think about, what do I think this book is about? Do I think it's going to be interesting? And that's called a strategy called activating background knowledge. That's where basically you're just thinking about, what do I already know about this topic, this place, or this person that might make me understand the novel better. So if I look at this novel cover, what do I see? The title is Where the Rivers Meet. That doesn't really give me a great idea. What do we see? There is a First Nations girl. She's got long hair, might be a teenager, might be a young woman. She's holding some books. She's got kind of like a special tooth hanging down. She looks like she's out sort of in the woods and there's a mountain behind her. Where the rivers meet, so she's kind of standing next to a river, so maybe she lives near a river, or maybe something's going to happen by a river. I don't know. Now, there's a little blurb on the back cover. They usually do this because if you are going to buy the book, what people often do is they flip it over, look at this, and decide, hey, does that interest me or does it not? So here's what it says on the back cover of your book. Nancy Antoine is a Shuswap Indian high school senior determined to escape the bleakness and chaos of the small BC town she lives in. And she sees the school as her way out, no matter what she has to endure. But Nancy's resolve falters as tragedy adds to her confusion and anger. In desperation, she turns to the traditions of her people, and with the love and patience of an elder, she begins to prepare for the spirit quest, her people's ancient ritual of self-discovery. But will she be able to endure the rigors of this test? And if she does, can she find the strength and wisdom to fight the forces devastating her people? So, what do I know about the setting? They're in British Columbia. She's in high school. She's First Nation. It sounds like she talks about the small town being bleak and chaotic. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I certainly have known a lot of small towns like that. Um, I don't know if part of that is because of just being a small town or part of that is because she's First Nation. What genre is this book? So genre is kind of like what type? Is it a murder mystery? Is it science fiction? Is it fantasy? This is what I would consider a realistic genre. So that gives me some ideas going forward to hold in my head and examine what I read. And that's just the strategy of activating background knowledge. Okay, I don't want to go any further. Tomorrow we will tackle uh, reading the first chapter and looking at the chapter questions and understanding how to answer them, okay? Thank you so much, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.